My name's Barrett Nash. I'm here today because I want to give you my personal experience on failure. Failure not as something that is either positive or negative, as with everything in life, it's what you make out of it, but rather the fact that I think that, quite often in society and in business, we tend to deconstruct and analyze success and try to reverse engineer success. But I feel like success often happens through arbitrary or unreplicable ways where it's like, we factor success onto like singular motivations. The person was brilliant, like the idea was perfect, they were the right product for the right market, when like there's like other factors involved. There's luck, there's timing, there's bad luck, there's bad timing, there's doing things in the wrong order. And myself, I've had the good opportunity to fail more than most people I've met in my life. And I'd like to, frankly, just kind of share some failures I've gone through and how I reflect on them. And I don't expect to be able to warn you to not make those same failures, because I feel like for almost everyone, we have to go through the journey of life ourselves to understand anything. I know myself, I often feel like I'm like the little boy who has to touch the stove to know that it's hot. But at least you can maybe I can give some insight into things that might help you down a difficult path, or make you just be able to realize that sometimes the linear nature of life is in fact not so linear. Now, before I'd like to talk about failure, I'd first like to mention purpose, because I feel like success, my apologies, success or failure doesn't make a difference one way or the other if we don't have a purpose that resonates in our hearts, in our brains, in our souls. And for me, I feel like it is something I would rather fail working towards something that I care about, something that is aligned with my purpose, than to succeed in something I don't care about, which is an obvious thing to say, but it's something that took me a lot of reflection to kind of appreciate was the way I wanted to live my life. Because often in our societies, there's a very narrow definition of success, and we're, all competing on these same, ladders of success. And one of the most liberating things to kind of free yourself, and I believe prime you for ultimate success, is to not be looking at what others are doing, but to really deeply understand for yourself, what is it that you are motivated by? What is success? Because I think, for the aspirations that a lot of people have, financial success, fame, recognition, being a corporate titan, to actually get into the position where you accomplish the way you dream about these things is so fantastically difficult that just the motivation of money, for example, is probably not enough to actually carry you to serious wealth, unless you are, the 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 or 1 in a billion, that, luck does exist, and sometimes there is just a clean shot. But I feel that, when you're having a hard day and when failure is happening, the way you get through it is because it doesn't question your foundation, which is your purpose. There's a famous saying that it's better to be at the bottom of a mountain you want to climb rather than halfway up or at the top of a mountain you don't want to climb. And I deeply feel this, because then every time in my life I'm confronted by failure, instead of having to go back to zero, instead of having to question my identity, instead of having to feel like a failure because of my failure. Instead, I just treat it like a dead path. I tried as hard as I could. That is something that I believe is important, that you should, when you're acting out a process that ultimately results in failure, you should confirm that it is in fact failed before choosing to abandon it, so that there's a rigor in your ability to debunk false hypotheses. But when I debunk a false hypothesis, it does suck. I'm in venture capital funded startups in Africa, and I've had to fire a lot of people. I've had to flee countries with corrupt officials wanting me to take my passport. There's some real radical times in the life you can choose to live, but it's all fine if it's steps towards your highest level purpose. And sometimes I feel like we forget the multidimensional nature of life. We want to basically win. Obviously, we would prefer to win 100% of the time, but I think there's like something innate in us that at least thinks we should win like 50% of the time. It's kind of like a psychological assumption, like, yeah, like of course we should just like about win half the time. But I think that maybe it's not like that. Maybe we win 1 in 100 times. I've been really fascinated by, in my spare time, which I use to kind of like sharpen a different part of my brain. I've been studying quantum physics, and I feel like the underlying kind of like a hypothesis of like the quantum reality is that the world, the universe, is predicated off of a series of 1 in a billion chance anomalies. And in our lives, what if the odds we are dealing with are not 50-50 but 1 in a billion? Does that mean that we should give up on the path that is working towards our purpose, or does it mean we just still need to just get down to it and deal with the fact that maybe success is not what we're ultimately going to result in, but each time we try, you can't win if you don't play, and you got to play to win, and you got to play. So my own purpose has been trying to figure out how to make the world like a more fair place, which sounds kind of like naive, I appreciate, and also kind of impossible. But it just seems like a fundamental fact that the world should be kind of more fair. So my original path into this was in education. I've been working at technology startups in Canada. I'm a Canadian. I'd already spent I was a volunteer teacher in Western Africa and Ghana, and I'd had the opportunity to see this deep unfairness in Africa and realize that the things that I took for granted are not taken for granted for most people. So, I had developed this professional skill set, so I took a job with MIT Media Lab's One Laptop Per Child, which positioned me deploying an educational laptop system in Rwanda, in Central Africa, where the government of Rwanda had bought 250,000 educational laptops from us, and it was a big deal project for them. It was the largest initiative of this in Africa. They put us on the money. That was a pretty good day when we saw that that picture my friend had taken was on the 500 franc note. But the project was an incredible failure, huge failure. Well, why did it fail? Well, there was a lot of arrogance from the academic stakeholders who, like MIT was really problematic in how they defined this. They put academics in charge instead of business people, and they said that basically the country had to change every aspect of their curriculum, and the country pushed back. The teachers really pushed back, and what happened was this sloppy deployment that got stuck in this bureaucratic molasses where nobody was happy. And ultimately, most of the laptops ended up in boxes. They'd be maybe pulled out in like show schools, like, once every 6 months to show people that they were working, and they were just largely ignored. This was a challenging thing because I thought, education, like let's hack education. What an obvious way to make the world more fair. Let's just shove a laptop in everybody's hands. But it didn't work, and it actually turned me off of education because, one, I felt morally ambiguous in terms of trying to be radical in terms of doing something new when you're dealing with children, because if you mess up, then you could mess up with an entire generation of students, right? I also believe that education is just inherently too slow. It felt like being on the Titanic where the rudder just wasn't big enough. There's so many different stakeholders, there's so much politics, and it felt like education is one of those things which is so important, but I don't think that's the most efficient way for what I personally have a capacity on to move towards my objective. So I left, and I actually went and wrote a book. I moved to India. I shaved half my head, and I wrote it. It's called A Man Dies Peacefully, and it's about a person who tries to make the world a better place, but only causes problems along the way. It's not too autobiographical. It's actually fully fiction, but of course, everything we always create comes from ourselves. But this was a failure as well, because my idea was that I, believe that the world is a beautiful thing to engage with, and if we're talking about, access to equal opportunity, let's just communicate in as efficient a way as possible the, wonderful reality that we exist in, and therefore if we can create art that can communicate efficiently, then people will be empowered by art to be living their best selves. But that's a bit arrogant, huh? And yeah, I kind of realized that halfway through. I was going whoa, I think I'm doing this all wrong, because I think that while art is important, and I still believe that actually the creativity of art is one of the things that can lead to business success. I think doing a technology startup is actually more similar to being an artist than to being an MBA, but definitely it's kind of having both helps. But I also kind of felt, well, you can't tell people the answers in life. They have to go through the journey themselves. And I was telling people the journey that I'd come up with, but it was kind of a waste of time because they had to live it for themselves. So I finished the book, I'm proud of it, but I abandoned it. I didn't know what to do, but I went back to MIT, and I had a good friend there, and he's like, well, why don't we do a startup, man? And let's do it for the same purpose that you're working on. Cool, man, why not? So I got into doing technology startups, and eventually I made the most successful startup to ever come out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the first mover in on-demand and ride-hailing in Rwanda, and it was pretty cool. We were really firing all cylinders. We had I don't know, 80,000 installs. We were doing 5,000 plus trips per day. It was like an Uber for motorcycle taxis that was originally about focusing on safety, but then was focusing on being a super app of connecting businesses together, making safe taxis to get around. But it failed too. Well, why did it fail? Well, we used an unsustainable business model predicated off of venture capital backed funded losses. And when we got a funding gap, even though we were meeting our metrics, we had to stop. It was horrible. I had to leave the country. I had to stop all the work we'd done. But there was a big lesson learned there too, which is, okay, well, let's, you can make any mistake once, but not twice. So let me not get in the same problems of using a business model that is based off of losses. Let me focus on getting the product right before building out teams. And where I am now, I'm trying to, I've just finished reading a book called Company of One, which I don't necessarily believe in, but right now I'm just being laser focused. I've done like maybe 120 iterations of a technology app that's current evolution has led it to being a peer-to-peer lending platform. The idea is if we're trying to get people more credit, if we're trying to get people more money, because with more money, they can be more liberated to analyze the choices in their life and therefore be more free. And the best way to get people more money is not to give them more money, but is to give them credit. Because with credit, you can then do real things, and that's where my current hypothesis is. And I'm trying to make peace with the fact that maybe this is something that I need to keep growing, keep working on. That maybe that this is going to not be success on this time. Maybe it will be another 10 years, another 1,000 product iterations. But if I keep working on it, I can keep making progress, which is the opposite. Where if I don't work on it, then I make no progress. Well, also I am playing to win. I'd really like to win this time, and I'm putting all the energy I can, because you also can't win if you don't put your best out. And I think anybody has the potential to win, and failure is not something to fear. Failure is just something to use as a learning cause, leapfrog, and get back to what you're doing, because I fundamentally believe we all have the capacity to achieve whatever it is we put our mind to. So the most important question we can do is, well, what is it that we want to put our mind to? Thank you.